Hey, Jen. Chag Sameach. Happy and healthy and very peaceful New Year.
You're right there.
Are we there?
Yeah, mute people.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're getting some new people all the time. That's wonderful. I'm Sue Kolecki. I'm the museum director at the Temple Museum of Jewish Art, Religious, and Culture. And that's part of the Temple-Tifereth Israel, of course. And we're so happy to have you here today for another art talk. This is part of our temple celebration of Sukkot. And we're just going to have a really nice conversation and pretend, well, actually not pretend, we're going to be in LA today. Before we get to LA to be with Isaac and Rabbi Shana, I want to thank Jen Mendelson from the temple. She's our operations director, and she is the host today of our program. And the beauty of these art talks is that we are very informal. We're able to chat with each other and also the artists and feel very comfortable with just having a conversation. So if you have something that you want to say or a question you want to ask and you don't want to ask it verbally, you can just in the chat box just type it in. Or if you want to talk, you can just kind of raise your hand, unmute yourself, and ask a question or participate. So we're really happy to have Jen as our host. Today, we're going to be, as I said, in LA. We're going to be visiting with Isaac Brengard Bialik and Rabbi Shana Brengard Bialik. And many of you have met them because they came to the temple last year as our artists in residence. They did a magnificent program for 3 days with us. It seemed like a month because they did so many things. They did all sorts of things from Gannon Gill's kids all the way to our seniors with projects and programs and openings. And we had Isaac's amazing work in our gallery. So we wanted to revisit the Sukkah that they actually created the art for this year and last year. We want to talk about that, and we also want to see what's going on that's new that Isaac is creating. So we're really thrilled to have you, Isaac and Rabbi Shana, and I want to just begin.
Thank you. We're really glad to be back with you guys virtually in Cleveland. We had such a great time with you last Sukkot a year ago.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, and as you say, Sue, it seemed like we were there for so long because we get to be with so many members of this community, at every level, in every way, studying and praying and creating and just hanging out. It was really wonderful.
All the way from your preschoolers to pretty much everybody. So thank you for inviting us back. We have we're going to share some slides and some pictures. Oh, just in case you don't remember us or you didn't get a chance to meet us last year, I'm Rabbi Shana Brengard Bialik.
I'm Isaac Brengard Bialik.
We've been married for 26 years now, and this is what we do, is we travel.
Yeah, travel around, teaching
Torah. And art, and kind of the combination of those two things together. We call it paper midrash. Midrash is the art of studying Torah in a way where you use other texts to understand, to deepen your understanding of what Torah is trying to teach us. And Isaac's other text is comic books and comic book heroes, something that you as Clevelanders are very familiar with, the importance of superheroes in our, in the way we think about literature and as a way to help understand our own stories as well. So we're going to explore a little bit of that with you. So we'll start by sharing our screen. If you have questions or things, again, if you put them in the chat, I think Jen will we'll read them out loud. Otherwise, feel free to stop and ask. So.
Hey, look, he and I are wearing the same shirt. Yeah, so I mean, it is Sukkot. We're in the middle of it. Many of us have been spending time in our own Sukkot at our homes, or obviously you guys had an event at the Sukkah at TTTI yesterday, which looked like it was awesome, gathering around the Sukkah instead of within it altogether. But
So taking turns going through, and
but we were talking about the fact that, yeah, during Sukkot, I mean, even right now, there are still guests you're allowed to have in your Sukkah.
Right, and we explored this with you last year, Ushpizin and Ushpizot. And these are spiritual guests that we invite into the Sukkah. So we're gonna actually start with looking at a little from last year, and then we'll get into Ushpizin and Ushpizot. We were very, very excited, even just from landing in your airport, that this was the first thing that we saw in Cleveland.
Yeah, we all know Superman was born in Cleveland, created by Siegel and Schuster. And so it was very exciting to be in a place where this story, this very Jewish story begins, and to know that we were going to be able to be talking about it and sharing that with you while we were there.
So we had opportunities to teach so many different groups of people, and this, from the setup, looks like this was a paper cutting workshop that we did, and we're going to share a little bit of the art that you guys created as well.
Mm-hmm. It was great to have the gallery space, to be able to bring my work in there, but I think really what was most exciting about the trip is the work that we created together, which, is we've got this wonderful mitzvah, this commandment about creating beautiful things, and to be able to do it as a community was so fulfilling.
Right, that we're not just told to perform commandments or to create a sukkah, but to do them as beautifully as possible. So your sukkah should be the most beautiful sukkah that you are able to create. And again, I think depending on weather and things like that, but that when you create a sukkah, it should be beautiful. Your lulav should be beautiful. You should have as fresh of a myrtle and a willow and palm leaves as you can find. Your etrog should be beautiful, right? And it's not just for Sukkot, but that if you're celebrating Shabbat, you should be using beautiful candlesticks, and you should be making your favorite foods, that we try to enhance our joy in the holidays. And Sukkot, that's especially important for how do we beautify Sukkot, because Sukkot is such a reminder, it's temporary, right? We get to enjoy this amazing thing for a week, and that's it. Then we have to put it away. And so we make it as beautiful as we can for the time that we get to enjoy it, because Sukkot kind of reminds us of that temporary nature of life and enjoying things while we can.
Yeah, even before you guys all joined us here, Sue and Jen and us, we were talking about, when do we have to take the Sukkah down? Can we leave it up for a little bit longer? Because it's so wonderful to spend time in it. Right,
but it's also a very tangible reminder of that spiritual, that that everything is temporary, and that you guys experience rain. We need rain. We've been waving our lulav. We desperately need rain in California. Ours sometimes comes down early due to wind. We haven't been able to enjoy ours as much because the air quality has been bad, right? That it is this reminder of that all security comes from God, and it's sort of like a temporary illusion that where security and community comes from and what we create together, whether it's virtually online like this or the way that you were able to come together in the parking lot in your sukkah as well. So let's take a look at what we created with you guys, what you guys created.
So let's see, I think I do. There we go.
All right, so I think this was a Saturday night activity, a Sunday night activity. So we had prepared these banners, and Isaac laid out the tape in the style of his paper cutting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, imagine, right, it was that time when we were all together, getting fingers painted.
Touching each other's hands without sanitizer.
Yeah, I mean, it was so great to be literally and figuratively, touching everybody, connecting, in that moment when you're so close, holding each other's hands and painting and having a moment of discussion of, hey, this is sort of crazy. This reminds me of finger painting in school. But to be together, and working together to create this art.
Right, and the thing that we love about this activity is it is a way for everybody to have something individual and personal in it, their fingerprints, but that everybody's work comes together and it becomes a communal piece of art. So that it's not just one person's, but that everybody has a little bit of their individual stamp their fingerprint on it as well. And so here's peeling off the tape, which I think was probably the most exciting thing. We had a lot of volunteers wanting to peel the tape. It's very satisfying to peel the tape when it's done.
Yeah, and then to be able to, once it's all removed, to see those beautiful banners. We've got shots of them in the Sukkah as well, obviously. But to see the etrogim, in their bright golden colors. Ours this year has a little more green in it, so I feel like we're seeing it here as well. Or the other species, the palm and the willow and the myrtle, all those branches. And of course, these pomegranates, these lovely, rich, delicious fruits that we can enjoy at this time of year.
Right, which have their own sort of midrash, that why are we eating pomegranates? Because they have 613 seeds, not that I've ever counted. And this year, a family of squirrels stole every pomegranate off of our pomegranate tree. But right, there's a little bit of midrash that it's 613, that we eat them to remember our connection to the commandments and to our history.
Yeah, and it was so wonderful to know that, this is last year when we were together with the rabbis under the Sukkah, with the lulav and the etrog, to be engaged in these commandments together, as a community.
Right. So here's also that the beauty of your synagogue, which I love that it's a lot of your art that is the walls beautifying the synagogue. I love your stuff, so I think it makes a really lovely sukkah. Is this year? This is last year.
No, this is this year already. So Sue sent along some pictures so we could sort of be there virtually even before the celebration yesterday. And to see that, even in these difficult times, right, we still build the sukkah, we still come together. I love these separated chairs, right? There's just enough distance there. To see the banners that we created together as a community, and to know that this goes on, Jewish life continues. To see the work that I created, my Ushpizin and Ushpizot, the guests that I created specifically to bring to Cleveland last year, to see them still in the Sukkah, it's a lovely thing.
So this kind of leads us into Ushpizin and Ushpizot, what they are and why we welcome them in the Sukkah. And you guys have taken these images and made them huge and really invited them in the Sukkah in a much larger than life sort of way. So where this comes from, and this is also how Midrash works, right? We take a piece of text from Torah and we try to see, is there something unusual about it? Something that raises a question, perhaps in this case, something that's repeated. We might say, why is it repeated? So if you look at this piece of Torah, and we highlighted in yellow, the verb shev is repeated, right? So we have, you shall dwell in booths 7 days, and all citizens of Israel shall dwell in booths. And it raises the question, so why are we tishvu and yishvu, right? Why does it say dwell twice? It's pretty much the same thing. And so the answer comes actually from Zohar in a midrashic method, saying that, well, each one refers to something different. That the first one is for guests, and that the second dwell is for human beings, which raises a question for us. If human beings are the second one and we're not the guests, who are the guests? And the answer is that the guests are from our history and from our tradition, right? That we invite 7, one for each night of Sukkot. We invite a different guest in. So we invite, you can see, this is actually from the Reformed prayer book on the doorpost of your house. We have Ushpizin, right? The traditional were just men, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, and King David. But we think about the women as well that we honor. So Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, Rachel, Miriam, Hannah, and Deborah. I'm thinking about the one that we have up in our sukkah that suggests 7 different ushpizot. It suggests all the female prophets. So we've got Huldah in there.
And Abigail.
And Esther, right.
Yeah.
It goes with prophets instead. But this idea that we think about our history and our tradition and our ancestors, and who would we invite in our sukkah that can't be there physically? Because of time and space, and who would we want to share this moment with? And it's so meaningful to us right now where we can't be with the people that we want to be with. I don't know about you guys, we just sent a picture to friends of ours of their children's baby feet when they first visited our sukkah when they were, 7 years ago when they were infants. And we sent a picture saying, every year we've got their handprints as their kids grow up, and missing that, being able to invite them to sit in our sukkah with us. And so I think we feel that even more now, not just in our sukkah, but at a time when we're being careful about who we're with and how often we're with them, and how we're protecting ourselves and how we're protecting each other in our community. We can't be together. So I think we're even more aware of this idea of who would I have with me if I could have anybody with me, if I wasn't separated, if I wasn't needing to be separated by space.
Yeah, and we shared this last year, where there's this wonderful comic book where in this sort of alternate universe, Batwoman, who is a Jewish superhero in all universes, but she meets this young woman who is, sharing with her the ideas of those heroes from Jewish history that inspire her. And I love that this mainstream comic about Batwoman, mentions, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and also Deborah, right? All of these female heroes. And what's wonderful is this young girl who's teaching Batwoman about them, about Shifra and Huldah and Abigail, Zipporah, right? That when you put those names together, the first letters of each of those names spell out Shazam, which you may know from the hero Captain Marvel. In the standard universe, he's a young boy who becomes this grown-up hero. In this universe, it's this young woman who becomes a Jewish hero inspired by the qualities and characteristics of these Jewish biblical heroes.
Right, so it becomes an acronym, but instead she's using the names of female Jewish heroes. But you said mainstream, so this is not a Jewish comic book?
No, not at all. I mean, this is just a comic from DC that, which publishes Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. But this is for a mainstream audience, but they are leveraging Jewish story in the same way that they might leverage Roman or Greek mythology or made up alien stuff. They feel like these are stories that people can understand, and when told well, we all relate and understand what's going on. And I think that's the power of comics to do that, is they tell these stories that we can relate to, and sometimes they're Jewish, and sometimes they have these nice lessons for us that we can connect to our text.
Right, so one of the things we talked about when we were with you last year is the difference between a sukkah and a lair, right? Between a hero's hideout, like Superman's Fortress of Solitude, but a place where heroes hang out versus a villain's lair. And we suggested that you could really see the difference that actually also comes from Jewish tradition, right? That we are told that when you're in your sukkah, you should be taking care of the disenfranchised, right? Because strangers, orphan, widows, that's code for disenfranchised. That our job as Jews is that we welcome people into our sukkah. This we're familiar with from Passover. Let anyone who's hungry come and eat, right? When we are living in this kind of precarious situation, if we're able to sleep in our sukkah, we know that we could go inside if it starts to rain, or if the air quality is too bad, or if it gets windy, or I don't know, maybe you even get snow in your sukkahs some year. We've heard about that, lake effect snow. So, right, but that if the weather becomes too difficult, you can move inside. And it reminds us of how our obligations to care for other people who may not have that opportunity to move inside. If the weather changes. And that if we're eating and drinking in our sukkah, we elevate that by sharing, and if not literally physically, but that we find other ways to share what we have with others and to take care of others as well. That's what makes it a sukkah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we love celebrating, we love all the special foods and the things that we do for holidays, but if you do it just for the sake of celebrating, then in fact, what it is the Mishnah Torah says, it's, that's not the celebration. It has to be something that we share with other people.
Right. It stops becoming, Mishnah Torah says it stops becoming a religious celebration and just as a celebration of your stomach. And this would be a villain's lair, right? That if you're locking the doors, if you are not letting anyone in, if you have things to share and you're not sharing them, that's the difference between a superhero's hideout and a villain's lair. In a villain's lair, there's no sharing.
Yeah.
It's just purely selfish.
And I love that the guests, the Ushpizin and Ushpizot that we invite, teach us the qualities that we want to aspire to.
Right. So one of the ways that we look at that is each day of Sukkot, we emphasize a different midah, a different quality. And so that when we think about the people we might invite to our Sukkah that embody those qualities. And these days we're thinking not just of our ancestors, but also people we know that embody these qualities. Right. So for splendor, we may think of someone who maybe dresses beautifully or decorates
your Aunt
beautifully.
Muriel,
You're thinking of
right?
my Aunt Muriel, who would have thought of herself always as someone who exhibited splendor,
Yeah.
right? But someone who uses that sense of style, both in themselves, but also to be really welcoming and caring to others. Of like, it's always nice to go somewhere where someone's prepared for you, and it feels like, oh, all of this is set up just for me. Right. So thinking about, do we have people in our lives that also embody some of these qualities?
Last year when we studied these, we used these as an inspiration in our paper cut workshops. So some of you joined us there. We had a bunch of them over the course of our stay where we worked together to create paper midrash. Inspired by the idea of Ushpizin and Ushpizot and the ideas of Sukkot and all of these qualities.
So we thought we'd share some of the work that you guys created, and we don't actually have names attached. So if you happen to be watching this morning and you see your art, please unmute, shout out, throw it up in the chat, raise your hand, let us know if this is what you had created. We're just going to kind of scroll through some of the art that the members of your community created with us.
Yeah, I mean, there's some beautiful expressions of, coming together.
Tony Scherzer.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. Tony Scherzer. That was mine. That was so much fun to do.
Excellent.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's such beautiful, meaningful work that was created. Things related to the season, right? This is that harvest time, or Sukkot created with, I love this shin here, that's the name of God we're representing.
Gorgeous.
There's some beautiful work here. I'm pretty sure the one on the left here is Nancy Schwartz Katz, who is another paper cut artist in your community. But seeing the different ways that we all start with these same texts about Sukkot, and that we all have these different understandings of what this means and how to represent these qualities.
Right, and I think we studied the same block of text with 60, 70 different people, and this is just some examples of all of the different ways that people experience them.
Yeah, really, really beautiful.
But let's look at what you created specifically to bring to share with Ushpizot, because you really played with this concept as well. Yeah,
I mean, and Sue, you put together such lovely shows and exhibitions in the museum space, and it was such a privilege to have my work seen in this way. You did such an incredible job of creating this sort of sukkah inside the gallery with my Ushpizin and Ushpizot and other pieces, and to see people joining us. This is Rabbi Schlein, obviously, with Rabbi Sally Priesand, who is one of the pieces that I made as a guest portrait. We'll see that later on. But to be able to see these pieces and share them with you all was really a wonderful thing.
Right, so another way that we think about the four species, which represent all sorts of different things, is they might represent our patriarchs, right? So that each of the four species represents a different patriarch, and you created 3 of these for the show last year.
Yeah, so Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are right here, along with Joseph from a different series. I created 7 large-scale patriarchs and matriarchs for the show. And yeah, they each represent different qualities. So whether it's grace or Isaac being bound in his story, or the myrtle from our lulav bustling with leaves and Jacob bustling with children. I love how the rabbis make these connections.
Well, because they're so creative in thinking about how do we make those connections, which opens it up for us as well, to think about how we find our story in Torah, and how we see ourselves, how we see others, that this is not just an ancient story. Look, and I am never aware of how ancient we are. And when I'm standing in my sukkah, waving my plants around, playing for rain, right? Like that, I just feel it down to my bones that we are an ancient people, that we have this deep connection to land and the universe. And this says that it's not just this old story, but it's also our story as well.
And I think that's why it's so important. You asked the question before about who would we want to invite in as guests, which is what I was thinking about last year when I made some special guests just for Cleveland, and I believe, and these now reside in your community. So we have, of course, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the creators of Superman, two nice Jewish boys from Cleveland. And these are created from cut up Superman comics. But these are the folks that I wanted to talk to in Cleveland to feel their presence in the Sukkah, as if inviting them to join us, which is, part of the fun of being in Cleveland for us.
Well, because their own wouldn't have been too far away. But also this is why, we talk about the Jewish origin of superheroes, or these two nice Jewish boys from Cleveland that really created what went mainstream.
Yeah. And of course, the other two of the four that I made were, so on the right, in the glasses, this is Rabbi Sally Priesand, who has a connection to Cleveland. She's from Cleveland. I made her up with Jewish superheroes, including like Kitty Pryde. You can see in one of her eyeglasses, it says, "Now it's my turn." Just this sort of reflection on, the equality of the sexes that we strive for in Judaism in the larger world. And on the left is Golda Meir, the first female prime minister, the only female prime minister of Israel, but let's say the first and be optimistic, also made with those strong, powerful Jewish superheroes.
So you've been thinking about this, you did to prepare when we actually got to visit Cleveland in person, but we've been thinking about this virtual visit as well. And you started thinking again about Cleveland and Clevelandites in your new work and what you've been working on. Yeah,
and my work is always inspired by, wherever my head is at. And we've been talking about this virtual visit to Cleveland. And so this is sort of an in-progress shot of a new portrait that I made, and I've got the thing on the next page, Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver, to whose story we were introduced when we were in Cleveland with you all. And, thinking about his commitment to workers' rights, in particular, I made him up with Superman comics, but featuring Perry White, and the newsroom of the Daily Planet, thinking about the importance that we place on, the working part of our lives, especially now when for so many of us that's different. People who are in an office or working at home, or people who have been, displaced by this pandemic, and there are these empty spaces, thinking about what it means to respect the working person, to respect the idea of work, the rights of everyone to be, protected. And in his glasses, I have this question from a comic that says, "What are you going to do?" Reminding us that this is something that, we have to take on for ourselves, this, looking out for each other and protecting ourselves and each other.
I mean, and here in California, it's actually a ballot issue coming up about are employees of delivery services, are they employees or are they contractors, right? So this is not an issue of the past, right? This is something that we still care about. We still think about those values that that we still try to think about. How do we as Jews, how do we support workers? How do we support each other?
I have two other guests that I made as well in anticipation of this visit. So this is Simpson Thorman, who is the first permanent Jewish resident of Cleveland. I got to do some great studying about Cleveland again this year. I'm so pleased. Who came over from Bavaria, and not only is he the first permanent resident of Cleveland, but he helped to establish the community and the first congregation. I believe there are stories that he would go back to New York when immigrants would come over from Bavaria, and he would greet them there, and he would bring them out to Cleveland. And I've made him specifically with the superhero character Nightcrawler, who is also an immigrant from Germany, also has to deal with this balance between, will people be accepting of me because I'm different, and how do I create community and create a family of friends? You can actually see lower down Nightcrawler and his team Excalibur, and they're saying, "I like this dream, it's worth fighting for." And Nightcrawler is reaching out to another hero and saying, "How about you?" And again, there's that sense of, welcoming the stranger as we are taught in Judaism, valuing, immigrants and the created community that we are all a part of. We say we're going to live together as a family, as a community, and work together.
Right, and he's not a rabbi. He's a shopkeeper.
Yeah, he was a shopkeeper. He was a fur trader. He was just this guy who wanted to start a life and have a Jewish community, and said, "This is what I can do." Just in the same way that we can all be empowered, right? What can any of us do?
And this one that you've been working on, and this is kind of an in progress piece, was inspired by or motivated by the recent death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, this is me working with all of my comics out. I was playing with a portrait of Justice Ginsburg and using the character of She-Hulk, whose alter ego Jennifer Walters is a lawyer and is I say she's a badass righter of wrongs who also has a strong right hook. She is someone who looks out for the little guy, uses her education and her knowledge and her training to fight for others. And so it's this portrait of that sort of strong, stern hand of justice as wielded by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Made up with comics, as I said, from She-Hulk, but also from the Justice League. You can see justice written across her hairline. You can see her dissent collar filled with bits and pieces of her story from a biographical comic about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So you see a little bit of Brooklyn, a little bit of Washington, D.C., and of course some texts in the middle, which we studied together, thinking about her legacy.
Right, so you used Tzedek Tzedek Terdov, justice you shall pursue, which she and probably every other Jewish lawyer in America has up in their office. She'd mentioned in interviews having it up in her office in 2 places, but you also used another text.
Yeah, well, you were sharing with me the text about Deborah from Judges, from the 4th chapter of Judges, that Deborah would sit under her palm tree, and the leaders of the Jewish community and her other community members would come to her for her justice, for her opinions.
Right, and that her palm tree was that she was totally transparent, that she did it completely out in the open in front of everybody. And so you knew what she was about.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of that transparency of justice, not just doing the right thing, but letting everybody see what that right thing is and share in these community ideals.
So since this is kind of an art talk, let me ask you, because I know that this was kind of an issue for you. You were trying to decide what to do with her eyes.
Yeah. And
that you wound up using this piece from She-Hulk that's got this really determined stance. And then you stood back from it for a couple of days and went, is this what I want? Like, is this the right image? Does she look too harsh, too determined?
Yeah, and one of your colleagues, Rabbi Dr. Laura Weiner, had talked about that grandmotherly aspect that we sometimes saw from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which is a way that it could have gone. But for me, I was thinking about, what do I want from my justice system? And I think that's this sense of advocacy and standing up against injustice, which I think is that stronger side, maybe that side you don't want to upset, right? The idea that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had a standard that she adhered to in terms of how you mete out justice and equality for everyone, regardless of their background or their gender or their sex, that equality and justice mean it's for everyone, and sometimes you have to really fight for that.
I like it. I like the determined look in her eye and She-Hulk's eye. I think that brings us to the end of our slides.
Yeah. So and
we went a little bit longer than we had thought we were going to.
But it's so great to reminisce about being there with you all in Cleveland. So and we can see some comments coming up here. We've got some other stuff that I would love to share from the studio, but Sue and Jen weren't sure if questions are coming in, if you wanted to talk a little bit before we move back to my studio table.
Sure. So I don't have any questions. I have a lot of wonderful comments that I will send you. But if anybody has a question, please feel free to unmute yourself now.
Do you want to move to the studio table and maybe start spotlighting the studio table while
that
people are
sounds
either
great.
typing or thinking?
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
All right, look, I can wave to you from over here. So this is me over here.
Sorry, you can probably hear our dog as well that is hanging out with us this morning.
Yeah. So as I said, I've been inspired by this virtual visit to Cleveland, but we've been in lockdown since March, and that has driven a lot of my more recent work.
So you've been really prolific lately, actually. And Jen, is it possible to spotlight the studio camera instead?
Sure. Let me pull it down 1 second.
And then depending on how you're looking, I believe you individually can also pin this if you want to see my face and Isaac standing in the background. So Isaac, you've been really, really prolific since all of this started in March. Tell us about, what have you been creating?
I've been working on a series of golems. I've been thinking about the traditional story of the golem as protection, and this sort of Jewish narrative of what do we do when we need help, when we need safety, when we're looking for protection from external forces that seek to oppose us. I'm going to put our dog outside because he doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
That was somebody at the front door. Sorry about that. Here, Isaac. We're going to have one of our kids deal with the dog.
Right.
So the golem stories, right? These are kind of the original Jewish superheroes. They start off very, very early. We have in Psalms this concept of a golem of this kind of mindless form. And then it evolves into golems become these heroes. The most famous story is the story of Rabbi Judah Loew of Prague, and that builds a golem that protects people from pogroms. That's actually a myth that's written much later, but we still have this story as a part of our literature that we can create something that can protect us or can save us in times of danger. So you've been really playing with that as perhaps you've been feeling in times of danger.
Yeah, and part of it is thinking about just that sort of form that a golem would take in terms of strength and the big arms and that posture as if ready to protect us. But I've also been playing around with the idea of the word, the magic word that activates the golem, which traditionally is emet, the Hebrew word for truth. And some of these golems do have that word as their motivating thing in their head. Not all of them do. So here's another Captain Marvel example. So where you can read within the golem's head the word Shazam. And again, Shazam is this word that activates, that turns young Billy Batson into grown-up Captain Marvel, the superhero. And I liked the idea that we can think about words that can turn us into the heroes or the protection that we need.
So what are some of the words that you used in some of your golems?
So this is a piece that is filled with Green Lantern comics. And what you can just about make out in the head there is part of Green Lantern's oath. In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. And I thought that is certainly something that we need to be thinking about, right? That sort of oath, that promise that we make to ourselves and to each other, that we will fight against evil, that we will seek it out, and then, what do? You fight. You fight until there's no fight left. That's what you do.
Can I have you go back to the first one for just a minute?
Certainly.
So this one, you've actually got an eye, right? And it's blue, like that Kabbalistic blue that's protection. But can you talk a little bit about the hero that influenced this, right? Because this one also comes from a canonically Jewish superhero.
Yeah, so Ben Grimm, who's known as the Thing, he's a member of the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four were created by two Jewish guys in New York, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Stanley Lieber and Jacob Kurtzberg. They created the Fantastic Four as a family of superheroes with all the problems and anxieties that regular people have, as opposed to the perfection that we often see in our superheroes. And Ben Grimm in particular is transformed from a fairly, hunky looking brawler into this rocky creature who is very much a golem in appearance and has to deal with, okay, what do I do now that I look this way, that people are scared of my visage, but how do I choose to be a hero anyway? So I wanted to use this Jewish hero in this golem, and I included his catchphrase, "It's clobbering time." Thinking about that was always what he yelled as he went into battle. When he knew it was time, when the only way to stop a bad guy was to punch him, that was his job. Much like Jack Kirby, who, when he wasn't with his pencil, was known as a bit of a brawler as well.
All right, so let's see some of the other words that you've chosen to put into your golems.
This is one made out of Superman comics. and you can see in the head of the golem Superman's catchphrase, truth and justice. So not just truth, but also justice. And there's an interesting balance there that we just talked about during Yom Kippur, right? Jonah says he is concerned about truth, but then we talk about justice and we talk about mercy, and thinking about when you are a hero, when you're in a position of power, how you wield that power and how you make sure that you have not just the strength to punch, but also in this case, these wings sort of represent the Shekhinah, that sheltering presence of God, and what it means to be merciful as well as to seek justice.
Right, there is something in golems that golems are sort of like art themselves. And forgive me that I cannot remember the person where I had read this. I've been doing a lot of golem research lately, but that they're like art themselves. Like you create the golem, but like in traditional golem stories, they also sometimes go awry, right? Like, well, they influence the Frankenstein story, right? That you create this monster, but you don't necessarily know what it's going to do. And it's the same thing with art. You create these pieces, but you can't control what the viewer is going to see. So like each of us looks and we see the form in a different way. You don't necessarily know what it's going to do or how it's going to be received.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And though, you know, the best of intentions can go awry. I think about Fantasia, right? And the story of the sorcerer's apprentice with all the mops and the buckets. We all know.
Which also gets credited, by the way, as being influenced by golem stories.
Certainly, yeah. You know, but I was, you know, just so much playing with these forms, and actually you start to see the real world creeping in even more specifically with this piece, which is made of Spider-Woman comics. You can see these empty streets here, which I found in this comic, and I was thinking about how the world was becoming emptied out, and that we do have specific things we are seeking safety from, seeking protection right now.
Mm-hmm. Right, and in California, we very early, and in Los Angeles County, very early things started closing down. So having those empty streets, and a lot of Los Angeles County is still not allowed to be reopened.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's definitely that sense of like, how do we respond? So tell us about a few more. This one's got the traditional emet on the forehead.
Yes, in English, it's from a Ragman comic. Ragman is one of the first canonically Jewish mainstream superheroes, you know, who's Jewish, and his story is very much about this sort of golem story of a created being and the idea of Emet as an empowering force. And in his fist, you can see the words, "Aren't you tired of being afraid?" That was certainly something that was going through my head, this sense of what is our story? How do we survive? You know, and that even when we know the truth, as you can see in this Wonder Woman golem, you know, that, you know, our story is still, as the golem fashioned of clay, we are so of this earth. You know, how do we bridge that gap between our reality and the world that we want to see?
So you chose superheroes to kind of match also the feelings that you were dealing with and the things you were looking for protection from.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, so this is a piece made with two different characters. So Moon Knight was a Jewish superhero, and the Night Nurse, who actually shows up in a bunch of these Netflix Marvel series, in Daredevil and Luke Cage, but she is a first responder. And I wanted to have this piece sort of, you know, marking my feelings about these healthcare workers who are out there on the front lines taking care of people in any emergency, but particularly right now during the pandemic, you know, and that the golem also can be one, you know, that is about that sort of protection, right? The nurses, the doctors, the healthcare workers who go to school to make themselves into the heroes we need right now.
Mm-hmm. And then I think this was the beginning when you started kind of loaning the golem story out, right?
Yeah.
That in Jewish tradition, the golem story is the Jewish community looking for protection from pogroms or from an outside community that's attacking them. And as the spring went on, you started creating golems in response to what you were seeing in the news.
Yeah, so we have seen this before. We are seeing it perhaps more now, but violence against the Black communities. You know, we certainly heard the words of George Floyd, like Eric Garner before him, saying, you know, "I can't breathe." We've seen the stories of Breonna Taylor. and thinking about how do golems help us think about these stories. So this golem is made of fire, inspired by our Jewish texts. So we read in Echa, right, in Ecclesiastes around Tisha B'Av, we read about martyrology. We read about the famous Jewish martyrs. There's a rabbi, I think I wrote it on the back here, Rabbi Hananiah ben Teriadon, who was burned for his beliefs and for teaching Torah. And so this golem sort of evokes that sense of being consumed by fire, and is made with the superhero Firestorm, who is a black man named Jason Rausch. And he's asking here, how am I even supposed to breathe?
So you played with this with a few golems that you kind of were wrestling with this idea of how do we breathe, and how might a community be looking for help and protection? Yeah,
this golem, which is made out of character Storm from the X-Men, also a black superhero. Her motivating word is breathe. And she's made up of the storms, the powerful storms that she controls. And there's this wonderful portion here where she says, tell your masters, this mutant, which she's saving, this mutant is under the protection of the X-Men. And she talks about how, as a member of this superhero team, the Fantastic Four, as the Queen of Wakanda, she's briefly married to Black Panther, that she has a responsibility to be a protective force. And yeah, I feel like our golem story, as you say, lending out the golems to other communities who maybe are in need of protection right now, or at least encompassing them in that, that protective presence, is something that really inspired a lot of this work. You mentioned as well.
I have a question for you.
Oh, please. Was there a question?
Okay, I have a quick question. Someone asked, I mean, my head is these, they're just phenomenal. But somebody was asking about your process. So when you see a comic, an image in a comic book, like how do you react to it? Is it do you kind of keep it in your mind and then say, I'm going to use it in this way? Or how do you, what's the process that you use to get this all moving together, the image and the concept?
I love to talk about that. My process is actually fairly straightforward. It's always the same.
Do you want me to pull some stuff in front of the camera? You want to?
No, I think I will. But so I always start with text. These pieces, all of my work always starts with some Jewish motivating text, whether it's Torah or something from the Talmud that we've been studying, or in this case, the Golem story. That's what starts it off. And though I do have comics that that I think about using, they don't enter into the process until way further on. So Sean is showing you now my sketchbook. So playing with the idea of the golem, playing with these forms and drawing and thinking about protection, all of my pieces move from text to the sketch phase fairly quickly. Once I have the sketch is when I start cutting. And in fact, if you open up, oh, she's going to show you some of my color tests. Oh, it's for that piece right there. It's as if we planned this.
So can you see both if I hold it here?
Yeah, totally. So that was me, even once cutting, thinking about the colors and how I fill it. And in fact, these two pieces you're looking at are both made of Martian Manhunter comics. So he's a superhero who's relatively invulnerable except for his weakness to fire. And we were in the midst of a number of fires in our neighborhood. We could see flames, from the front porch. There was smoke in the sky and ash raining down. And so these pieces are all about that sense of feeling weakness before fire. So I knew what I wanted to build in terms of a golem, playing with the structure, playing with him rising out of the flames. And I had been thinking about the Martian Manhunter, but I didn't look at those comics until I'd already cut that first piece. So as Sean was showing you, there's this top layer that's a cutout, and the comics all get collaged behind it. Once I finished cutting out that top layer, that's when I opened up my Martian Manhunter comics and started to see what I could find, what would help me tell the story that I was looking at. And that's where I found these great speech bubbles. So in the one that Shauna just opened, what does it say in the head there? It says, don't count me out yet, friend. And I think this piece is currently named "We Come from the Fire." It's inspired by a Dan Nichols rendition of a song about our origin story, but thinking about what it means to rise up from those flames unburned, even when that is our weakness. So that's the process. It's, you know, text, sketch, cutting, and then the comics. You know, what Shauna's got in her hand now on the right is Made of Black Lightning comics. He's a black superhero, and I knew I was going to come back to him. So yeah, thinking about how do I play with the comics, and I wanted to build a golem to fill with him, you know, or the piece on the right, which is this water. I was thinking about how does water protect us from fire? So it's made with Aquaman comics, but I always look for the comics once I've completed the structure of the piece. And these are all done, but I haven't taped them closed yet because I keep looking at them. None of them are named, really. None of them are signed. They're all, I consider them a body of work that's all being developed together. This one I had so much fun with, using a badly translated portion of an old German story about the golem that refers to the golem's beard of many colors. And I was thinking about Joseph. You know, there's so much, and these are two of my more recent ones, and they're companion pieces, made with the same size head, the same fists, but it's sort of these two sides of my brain. One is on the left, this big blue golem, all these questions. How do we do this? How do we move on? How do we go forward? And you can see a little bit of this character, the Vision, in this defenestrated landscape, and there's this noise and clash. And on the other hand, the red golem, which is a more svelte, perhaps female-inspired figure, you have more of this sense of determination, of strength, of rage-fueled fighting. We are not finished yet, right? This sense that we still can figure out how to answer these questions. A true warrior vows to never back down. And I love this as well, on the other hand, where she's asked about rage, and the character says, yeah, you want to see rage? I'll show you rage. I think we all have these moments where we experience you know, fear, anxiety, but also strength and perseverance and rage, and all of these things at once. So that's what this series is. It's all me sort of fighting through these experiences.
So kind of, I mean, it was years, I think, of marriage before you let me look in a sketchbook. So that you're being kind of vulnerable here, sharing your art is really kind of showing what's going on inside of you. Your reverse golems are really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with these reverse golems? Yeah,
so the golems are symbols of strength and protection, but these reverse golems or anti-golems, I'm not even sure how I referred to them yet, are surrounded by all of these problems and the anxiety of the times. So on the left, that's actually the reverse of the first golem that I made, and he's surrounded by all these speech bubbles with words that say horror and die, and there are these screams, and just this sense of being surrounded by the chaos of the world, and how does one stand strong against that? You know, the golem is an external force that we create, but also they're very autobiographical for me, and I find myself in this situation feeling surrounded by all of this. Or this other piece, which is a reverse of the Black Lightning piece, all of the panels around in the speech bubbles they feature Lex Luthor. I don't have to tell Clevelandites, notorious bad guy Lex Luthor, Superman's arch enemy, and you see some of that pressure and that stress, you know, all around. This piece on the right was made more recently. You know, we've had fires up and down our coast. You've probably seen the footage from Oregon and Washington with those red skies and the red clouds. And this was a day where that was all over the news, and our skies were gray, and we felt like, well, at least they're not red. But this is that sense of being surrounded, you know, trapped in by, you know, by what we have allowed to happen. You know, climate change is here, and we have to figure out, how do we protect ourselves? How do we not just get so broken down by all of this? How do we find ourselves surrounded by it and still find the strength to protect ourselves and each other?
So I'm gonna, if do we have another minute to show a couple other pieces?
Sue, we're coming up, and Jen, we're still going? Excellent. All right, yeah. What do you want to bring out?
Just because I feel like these sort of answer that question. So how do you deal with all these fear? You also created these pieces that are, these are mythical figures created by God, right? These are God's creations. And they're a little bit more whimsical and playful.
Yeah, I have 3 anthropomorphized mystical creatures. So this is the Ziz, who is this mystical bird-like creature with this really long neck. Most of us, I think, first became familiar with the Ziz through the kids' books, like The Hardest Word and so on. But this is my vision of a sort of personified Ziz golem sort of figure. The Ziz is, if the Ziz is the master of the air, the Leviathan is the creature of the sea. And so again, we have this anthropomorphized Leviathan. And these are all made with mutant superheroes that sort of connect to the stories. We only have little references to these creatures in our texts, but they're fascinating. Like the Leviathan, who takes, so when Jonah is trapped in that big fish in the story, the fish takes him on a tour of the world and talks about the Leviathan and about the future and, you know, the thing that's going to happen to the Leviathan in messianic times, that we're all going to eat it because it's delicious. I mean, there's these weird stories that I wanted to sort of play with.
I think it's like a giant salmon, like lox for everybody.
Yeah. And then the third, so we have the air and this is the water. The third creature is the creature of the land, the behemoth. And again, you can sort of see the hint of the animal coming through with those horns in the hat, and those stripes along the leg. But this sense that the behemoth is all beasts and this, you know, sort of rebellious, loud, you know, obnoxious, you know, creature, but also one who represents animal life. So yeah, playing around with all of these ideas that our tradition gives us, exploring the stories and trying to bring myself to them. I'm looking at my clock and I don't want to keep you guys past. I know some of you are probably you've got things going on at 3 o'clock. So I'd love to take more questions, or Sue or Jen, if you have anything else that you wanted to see from us.
Sure. So what, oh my God, my head is exploding.
I have been very prolific.
It's not even spinning anymore. It was spinning a while ago. Now it's exploding. So we have a minute to comment or a question, please. I know that you're thinking about things.
And the comments and chat are terrific. But if anyone has a question, now's the time.
Yeah, really. Throw it out there. Okay, have you ever done a series, let's see, what does it say? Have you ever done a series celebrating immigrants as superheroes, pioneers in the new world?
I totally have. Oh my goodness.
Are the originals here?
Wait, do I have my dreamers? No, I think they might be. Where are they right now? So I have a series of 3 dreamers that I made that are all Joseph figures, Joseph the Dreamer, but they're made up of undocumented immigrant superheroes. So one of them is Superman, who is an undocumented alien superhero from another planet. The other 2 are Bunker, who is from another country and fights as a member of the Teen Titans in San Francisco. And the third is America Chavez, who is from another dimension and comes to our world to be a member of the Avengers. And yeah, playing with the idea of what it means to, what is it that Lin-Manuel Miranda says, immigrants, we get the job done. We are an immigrant people. You know, my parents were the first generation in my family born here. My grandparents all came from the old world. You know, all of us have those stories, whether it's now or 200, 300 years ago, as some Jews have been here for that long, but we all come from somewhere else. We are a people of immigrants and itinerant, you know, communities all over the place. Whether it's, you know, starting fresh in Cleveland from the New World, or New York, coming off at Ellis Island, or, you know, those first Jews in space soon, right? We're expecting to see some sort of Jewish community on Mars one day. I want to be there.
Right, and they might be what's wrapped in bubble wrap up there, but you could send Sue a link to your blog that's got actually all those dreamers on them.
Oh yeah, I do. If you want to look at them, my website is nicejewishartist.com, and I have pictures of the dreamers there and a link to my blog with posts about them. Yeah, so the immigrant cause is one that is very close to my heart.
So as
And I
you
see
can,
someone saying,
so,
go ahead, Sue.
oh, I was going to say, so, you know, this has been just an absolutely terrific hour spent with you. And, you know, when I first saw your artwork about 1.5 years ago online, I thought, you know, I am really attracted to this graphic, bold work. I'm going to find out who did this. And then, you know, I got in touch with you, and we kind of, you know, came up with an idea to work together to do a theme, a concept about learning and focusing on the holiday of Sukkot and actually doing work for a Sukkah. And the three of us brainstormed and worked together, and the energy that was there from you was remarkable and powerful. And then I learned more and more about all the other kinds of art that you've been doing. And this shows everyone on this Zoom how remarkable and how energetic and how deep your work is. I mean, and it's not only graphically and visually exciting, but the stories and the meaning behind it all pull it so much together and make you question more about what you know and what you want to learn, and it, you know, just keeps on going. We appreciate that so much. And it's hard to believe that you gave us so much information in 1 hour. I'm still, what you made, you know, with the Rabbi out of Hillel Silver and the Thurman, and of course the, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg piece that you blew us all away with just now, and the Golems. I mean, really, so much to think about. You know, especially in today's world with needing protection and superpowers and all. So magical hour for us, full of. We also want to tell you that that our beautiful Sukkah that is up now will be coming down on Sunday, of course. And so you can make arrangements. Jen, I'm going to put you on to tell people how to do that, but to come in so that you're socially distanced and you can, you know, be in the Sukkah, have a meal in the Sukkah if you want, but definitely come by and see how wonderful the art in our whole Sukkah is this year because of last year. So we are thrilled that we have this relationship with you, and we hope that we'll do other ones in the future. Does anyone else want to, Jen, do you want to tell people how they can check the Sukkah? And I want to thank you all and say Chag Sameach. And if anyone else wants to ask or make a comment right now, you're welcome to.
Right, so if anyone wants to plan a lunch, an afternoon, an evening, please call us. Marlene Whitman is the point person, but you can also reach me. I think Marlene had to step off the call. You can go to our website. There's been a few emails with the links. We really want, you know, this, I think for the next 10 days, the weather's supposed to be terrific here. We really want all of you to come and check it out. It's beautiful this year. More so, I think, than any year in recent times. So come join us. We still have some good days left. So let us know.
Well, have you in Los Angeles with us? I'm going to give you an opportunity to do something that we couldn't do when we were in Cleveland. I'm just going to show while you guys finish talking and Isaac's sharing his blog entry, a little bit of Isaac's studio workspace. Someone asked about the comics and how that works, so I'm just going to share this while you guys finish up. You can enjoy a peek behind the scenes.
It's a little crazy right now. I've got comics all over the place. The floor is actually not too bad, but I usually wind up walking around the house with little bits of comics stuck to the bottoms of my feet.
Or on the dog's nose.
Or on the dog's nose. But yeah, so we've been doing, you know, prepping for workshops delivered virtually. I've been making work. I'm putting together an exhibition for a studio in Jerusalem right now. All these things that we can somehow manage to do even remotely. Those are my long boxes filled with comic books. So yeah, you know, it's been such a pleasure to share the work and the process with you all. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much, Sue, for letting us be a part of your community again, even for just an hour today.
Thank you.
So beautiful and so organized. That's great. Does anyone else have any
Very much
questions?
so. Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for coming. We did record
Thank you
this
so much,
session.
and
It was wonderful.
thanks everyone.
Wonderful.
If you
Great to
don't
see
wanna miss
everyone.
it, we did record it.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
That's right.
I think that was a lot of fun. That was genuinely a lot of fun.
And it will be
It was great.
Chag Sameach.
Hi, Flo.
It was great.
We got here. We still got Flo
All
and
that energy.
Melvin's
Oh my gosh,
iPad.
And Maud and Ina.
Slide over there. Cool. This is great. I can't just start
This
reading
was
through these
great.
comments. There's so many
was
nice
great.
comments here. I saved them down for us.
Yeah,
So
really nice comments.
I'll send you and Sue the link later tonight. It will be unedited, but we'll send it just so you'll have it, and then we'll clean it up and we'll post it.
Okay, and then yeah, if you didn't get your blog, send that over, and that maybe people, if anybody's interested in following up and wants to see those, I think you wrote a whole thing about the different dreamers that you've made. So
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
I'll send you guys that link directly to the Dreamers. So my immigrants piece.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
yeah.
mentioned it.
And
Got
you have
it
a
shared.
Facebook page too. I think I follow your Facebook page. Don't you have
Yeah,
like a business page? Yeah.
Well, I've got a
Yeah.
fan page on Facebook. I've been still posting there, although I'm trying to pull back from Facebook. My Instagram page is where all the fun action is right
Oh,
now.
okay.
Okay. You know, we've all got to be up on all the socials to make sure that we've got
Very
ways
true.
of connecting
Right.
and sharing. So,
Right. Well, send all that to me so I can send that on to the 90 folks or more that have are on our list, and I can let them all know that.
that'd be wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah. Good. Oh, I thought that was just great. I hope you were pleased with it. I mean, I'm just blown away by all the work that you've been doing. And I know that we're all, I mean, really. That Golems
I'm not sure what happened to Leonard.
You know, it's been a crazy time, and I've, you know, talked with other artists about how, you know, how that we're dealing with this lockdown and the pandemic, and is it a font of creativity, or is it, you know, does it create a block? You know, how does one get through it? For me, it's been, you know, I've been able to work through it.
Very creative.
I've been inspired by a lot of stuff, maybe negatively inspired, but also positively. So yeah, I've been very lucky to keep finding things to deal with and to make. And I mean, we weren't kidding when we said thinking about Cleveland so long and who would we invite this year? You know, what guests would we make? And it's really been for me a great opportunity to think about that question. You know, who would we want in our Sukkah, and how do we celebrate, and what does that mean? So
Yeah.
I'm thinking like what Jewish musicians are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
oh, that's a next year question.
Yeah. Well, you could put the golem in you could put the
Bob
golem
Dylan,
in a
you guys
motorcade.
Okay. All right.
Hopefully we'll all be back up and running by next year at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope.
Oh no, that was a large group. I was nervous that you let them all in, and it was 25 people all at once. So
They had been in the waiting room. We kind of have a similar crowd, but I was telling them that I tend to mute all of them, and they ignore me and they unmute themselves. Like Malcolm is the worst. He's the worst offender. I probably muted him 15 times.
oh wow, that's like my
He's the
sister's
worst.
part.
It's like this back and forth. Like, no, you will not mute me. I will unmute myself.
No, this
But
is
most
great. 'cause
people are
we
pretty
can get
respectful.
started with screen sharing. Aw.
Mhm.
Oh, some really nice things.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, and then
Wow.
when I send, I captured the chat comments, so I can send those as well.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
I
thank
also
you.
saved that down from here. So
Okay, good.
That
Okay,
was lovely.
Great.
Thank you for inviting us to join your community again. And I'm so glad that we picked a piece of art that was somebody that was there. Like I was hoping there would be some overlap because I figured like if you were interested in this, you were interested enough to do it in person. So I'm really glad there was at least one.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't see all the, I mean, I know that we probably had, I don't know, 50 or 60 people between everyone making maybe more the paper cuts. And I didn't get to see, I walked around, but I didn't get to see each one when they were done. They were magnificent, and everyone took theirs home.
Is that Dropbox still around?
I mean, so I know we'd made them available afterwards, and we did that poster. I know that they're floating around. Someone over there must have them, but I can also, if you ever want them again, I've got all those files. If you say, can I re-download them? I can send them your way very easily. We pulled just a sample. Okay, I'll do that.
If you're doing virtual services, it'd be really easy to put them into your slides for Shabbat Sukkot this weekend. So
yeah, they're just JPEGs. You can drop them right into anything.
Okay, great.
So I will send you. I'll send you those as well.
Send them to who?
Send them to Jen too, if you have them.
Both of you, sure.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, if you have something like a trailer in the background of your, or before or after your services, you could also just pop them all up there so people can see each other's work. So
great.
The only thing I think we don't have his names.
I have names.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I'll send them to Deb. She's the one who does that kind of stuff. You know, you remember Deb.
Cool.
So good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, Hag Sameach to you guys.
Hag Sameach to
great.
you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We missed you. We missed not seeing you. That was so much fun last year. So we'll try to.
That was a lot.
Maybe
trying to keep it alive. Trying to keep it alive.
Yeah.
Well, we'll send more pictures in the Sukkah as the week goes on.
Yes, please do. We'd love to see them. And yeah, we'd love to do something again. And yeah, definitely. We're going to be back in Cleveland at some point, whether you invite us or not.
Eventually we'll start traveling again. So.
You are always invited. You are always invited. So,
okay.
Thanks. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.